Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So the featured location is now gone, and we have a brand new deck build. So over the weekend, I was thinking about some of the cards that I have never used in a deck or have never built a deck around. And so that's where the idea for today's deck came from, with Rockslide. So Rockslide, I have never featured him in a deck list. His vulnerability is shuffle 2 rocks into your opponent's deck. So it's essentially 2 Korgs that are dropped on the board, but he's a 4-cost card, which at that point in the game, usually you want to drop something with a little bit more immediate impact. So something like a Devil Dino, a Thor. There's a large number of 4-cost cards that typically take priority. However, if you shuffle 2 cards in their deck, whenever you think about it, an entire deck only has 12 cards, and you're adding 2. If you also played Korg, that's 3. You're shuffling 1/4 of the size of a deck into the opponent's deck. And so the odds are they will draw at least 1, potentially 2 or even 3 of those rocks, and that's resources that they're not going to be able to draw into and not going to be able to use. Maybe you just stop them from drawing into their Hela. Maybe you stop them from drawing into their Mr. Negative, their Iron Man, their Mystique, their Rogue, their hard counters that they need to push that power level where they need to. And so he falls under that category, similar to Iceman for me, is that his impact is always there to some degree, but you might not always see it. And so just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not necessarily there. And so let's run through the deck list. We are running a version of a junk deck, a send 'em crap, a flood their board style deck. However, we took out the components that lowers the power level of the board in favor of more disruption. And so starting off, we have Hood. Hood is going to be a great card and great target for Viper because he generates a 6-power demon token for us. And if we hit him with Viper, then all of a sudden they have a -2-power card in their lane, and that's 1 less card that they can play onto the board. And then we have Korg. Korg is going to shuffle 1 rock into the opponent's deck. And so if we can drop this early, maybe before they realize that we are running a flood the board style deck, maybe they drop the rock onto the board thinking that they're going to have plenty of space to play, and then all of a sudden we hit them with a Debrii and a Rockslide, pull the rest of their cards in with a Doc Ock. We can start doing some pretty crazy things with this potential Korg disruption. And then we have Angela. Angela's going to be a way that we can push a little bit of extra power. One of the biggest detriments of a Debrii style deck is that it doesn't push a lot of power onto the board. So how do you overcome that? So I wanted to mix in a few of the kind of aggro elements from successful aggro decks. So that is where Angela comes into play. A lot of times we won't really have a great play line prior to turn 2. So on turn 2, we can drop Angela. If we have Debrii in our hand, we can drop Debrii into the Angela lane after that to push rocks into the other 2, buff Angela up, and then we can kind of snowball off of that impact as well. And then we have Black Widow. Black Widow is going to be another way to restrict the opponent from drawing into their resources. So maybe the first turn they ended up drawing one of our rocks. Then we hit them with a Black Widow. That next turn they can't draw a card at all, and it can add a lot of frustration. I feel so bad for everybody that we play against with this deck list because it is so oppressive. And then we have Carnage. So we are sending a lot of like junk or crud onto our board as well as the opponent. And so we want a way to be able to clear that. And sometimes we're going to need to clear the Hood, Black Widow, maybe even like Raptors from Raptor Valley. Carnage is going to be able to be dropped in, clear up space, and offer a decent power push at the same time. And then we have Scorpion. Scorpion is another way that we're going to be able to kind of disrupt the opponent's play. If we don't have a better drop on turn 2, then we can drop Scorpion. Scorpion will impact all of the cards that they have in their current hand by -1, which helps set us up for a better Doc Ock a little bit later on. And then we have Viper. Viper is going to be ideal if we have already dropped Hood, or maybe we've dropped Debrii, and we can send them a rock, a guaranteed rock, or a guaranteed Hood to their side of the board to clog up their lanes, and she offers a moderate amount of power as well. We have Green Goblin. Most of the cards in this deck list want to flood the opponent's board. It wants to fill their space before they're able to do their big combos. And so Green Goblin, if we don't have Debrii, if we don't have a better turn 3 drop, is going to be good at doing that in disrupting the space of play that the opponent has. And we have Wolfsbane. Wolfsbane is going to be a great card to drop as the final card in a lane. She's going to offer us a pretty cheap way to get 7 additional power, which is pretty big for this deck list. We'll get 7 additional power into that lane, which a lot of times is what we need in this deck list, is a way to push late game power or push power for a cheap energy cost. And then we have Debrii, one of my favorite cards, but is pretty tricky to use consistently. Debrii is going to add rocks to the other locations, which is pretty self-explanatory. Even if you don't run a list directly around her, sometimes you can have her in your deck as a tech card, and you can end up filling up the Invisible Woman lane before they can drop their Onslaught, before they can drop their Hela, and it completely disrupts their game plan. But in this deck list, we are going to want to drop her as early as possible so that we can continue to try and limit their space, to force misplays, to force them to push power out onto the board too early, and then all of a sudden we pull the rest in with Doc Ock. We want to apply that pressure and keep the pressure on throughout the entire game. And that's where we have Rock Slide. Rock Slide, if we don't have a good drop on 4, he's going to be a pretty decent filler slot. He comes in at 6 power, which is okay for this deck list. That's a pretty high power point for this deck, and he shuffles 2 rocks into their deck. So that's going to hopefully stop them from drawing into their counter plays, their big, large cards, so that the space that we have confined them to, they're not able to really do a whole lot with. And then finally we have Doc Ock. Doc Ock is going to be really good if we have dropped both a Korg and a Rock Slide, or maybe a Korg, a Scorpion, and a Rock Slide. That gives us a really good chance that we're going to pull into some either reduced cards or rocks onto the board to be able to win that lane, hopefully for just the 10 power, so that we can start pushing our resources into the other locations. But that is the rundown of the deck list. We are going to go ahead and jump into a few games. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, so first up we have Destiny Part. And we do have Hood in our starting hand, so we're going to go ahead and throw him into the far right lane. We don't really want to put him into Stark Tower, because then if we do push him over, he'll at least get +2 power and be neutral in that lane. So we don't want to add any additional resources for them in that location, if we can help it. And so we are going to go ahead, and I think we do both. I think we do our Rock Slide and our Debrii here. I almost want to drop Black Widow, but I don't know. I think we utilize all of our energy. We do the Rock Slide to shuffle 2 rocks into their deck. That is going to be a 2 out of 9 chance that they draw into one of the rocks, and it ends up not giving them resources that they probably need. And then we'll drop Debrii to start filling up their locations as well. So if this turns out to be Space Throne, all of a sudden we have a card there, and they're not able to play anything, but of course we have the Hood, so we'd still lose that one, so that's, I guess, not a good example. Okay, so they drop Jubilee and they pull into a Psylocke, so that starts the ramp, but then we also drop a Rock there, so they have 3 cards and only 2 power in that middle location, which is huge. Do we go ahead and, I think we do. I think we go ahead and drop our Viper, try to finish capping out that location. I'm going to go ahead and snap. If we can easily sneak one location for 3 power, then all of a sudden we can start focusing the rest of our high power cards into another specific lane to give us a really good shot at winning one of those other locations. And so we will drop the Demon into Stark Tower as well, unless they can do something like an Iron Man. It's going to be hard for them to come up over all of the power that we're pushing onto the board. And so they do have Project Pegasus capped out at 4 energy, which is pretty unfortunate for them, but very fortunate for us. And so at some point we will need to drop at least one more card into the Project Pegasus lane. But I think for this turn, do we drop a Green Goblin here? I think we do. I think we fight for winning Stark Tower. I think they probably drop 1 resource, but not 2. They want to hold for ideally an Iron Man. And so I think they drop 1 card, and then we finish capping it out here, and that will force them into a retreat. There's the 1 card. Okay, it's the Sunspot, so that can grow over time, so that's a little bit unfortunate, but we are wildly ahead already. So we are 7 power ahead in that lane, and then I think we like really add insult to injury, and we just go ahead and drop the Doc Ock there. It's not going to pull into anything, but that's going to make it where if they skip the next 2 turns, it's not going to give them advantage into the Stark Tower lane, and they're not going to get an additional 2 power over us by having an additional card in the lane. And then if we have to, worst case scenario, we can do Black Widow and Carnage, which would give us a 6 power card into the Project Pegasus lane. I think we have this one locked down. I don't think there's anything they can do. And they did want to drop the Iron Man. So they were holding the Iron Man for 5 in Stark Tower, which is a really great play. It's a really great play into Stark Tower because it not only do all the cards get +2, but Iron Man elevates that ×2, and so then it's everything is getting basically a +4 bonus, and so it's really hard for the opponent to come up over that power level after that point. But we we did force the retreat. So with this deck, once you get them to a point where they don't have any other options, a lot of times it will force retreats. So if you feel like you have the advantage, it usually is in your best interest to snap early. That way you can at least get 2 cubes versus 1, or maybe 4 cubes if they snapped back. But we are going to go ahead and jump into the next one and see if we can keep the luck alive. All right, next up we have Healthy Snacks. And if you guys are new to the channel, we are currently at 2,854 subscribers at the time of recording this video, which is so incredibly close to our next major milestone of 3,000. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. We do offer daily Marvel Snap content. We're not going anywhere anytime soon, so if you are enjoying it, consider sticking around. And so they drop a Squirrel Girl. Muir Island will make their squirrel pretty powerful. That's a pretty buffed up squirrel. I'm a little bit torn though. I kind of want to drop Angela as the first card in that lane, and then we can drop a Debrii here. It's going to give them 2 cards that are pretty much worthless, that they're going to be shifting into one of these other 2 lanes on after turn 5. It'll just be 1 for us, and we could send them something with the Viper. Ooh, so it looks like they're running a destruction. They have a destruction tool some way, so maybe we kind of hold out on the Debrii until they drop their Killmonger, because at this point I'm pretty sure that they have a Killmonger, and so I think we're just going to drop the Black Widow. We're not going to drop onto our curve, unfortunately, because if they're running a deck that is running death, then dropping Debrii is just going to help their cause. So I assume they have a way to destroy the hood and all the squirrels that they put onto the board. But if they don't already have it in hand, we're going to try to prohibit them from drawing into them. And so Yondu, which destroys our hood, it's not terrible. And then Bucky Barnes, okay. And so actually a Debrii would get close to capping out a lot of these locations, making it a little bit harder. Unless they have that Killmonger, it's going to make it a little bit harder for them to destroy these cards. I think we still go with the rock slide here. If they don't have Killmonger in hand, we want to prohibit and restrict them from being able to draw into it. And so there's the Widow's Bite, and then there's Deathlock. So hopefully they don't have their key combo pieces. That would be like Killmonger, Wave, and Death. And so if they have Wave in hand, they'll probably drop it on this next turn. So we do need to do some form of power push onto the board for them. Maybe we do a Debrii and a Korg, which will shuffle a 3rd rock into their deck, and then we can drop Carnage here next turn, as long as this rock doesn't go here. Ooh. Maybe we force this middle lane to be capped out. That would send a rock here and a rock here, and then it'd be 3 cards in this lane. We could guarantee that we're not going to accidentally block off a lane that we don't intend to. I think we're going to go with that, and then we can kind of guarantee where these cards drop. And so they do drop their Killmonger. It doesn't kill any of our cards just yet, so there's no way that they could do a Killmonger and a Wave. But it is a little bit unfortunate that they had such a big power push into Muir Island. But we do shuffle a couple of rocks into their deck. We offer a decent power push of our own into Muir Island. Their rock goes over into Nova Roma. So Carnage would be an 8 power push for 2 energy. Then we could do another 5 with a Viper and a Scorpion. Otherwise, it would be a 7 power push for 3 energy with Wolfsbane. Okay. And so they did end up retreating. I am assuming what happened is that they started drawing into the rocks from like our core or our rock slide, and that they weren't able to draw into the pieces that they needed. They only had 2 cards in hand. If those 2 happen to be rocks, there's not a lot that they can do at that point. And so not a huge cube game, but with the destruction pieces that they do have, we had to play it a little bit more cautiously, but we were still able to, I assume, clog up their hand. They weren't able to draw into the resources that they needed, and so they weren't going to be able to push a large amount of power onto the board to swing the lanes that they needed to swing. All right, so next up we have Luckman. We do have our hood in our starting hand. We have Black Widow, and we also got Savage Land. I'm a little bit hesitant to drop Hood, because then we're going to have to rely on drawing into Carnage to be able to clear that. I think I'm going to drop Hood into the far right lane. I don't know why I favor the far right lane so much, but for whatever reason I do quite a bit. Okay, and so Hellfire Club 1-cost cards are not going to be able to be played here. Do we go with the Angela, or do we go with the Black Widow play? I think we go with the Angela. No, let's go with the Black Widow, because we will have Debrii that we can drop on 3. So if they end up dropping the Widow's Bite before they realize that we have a Debrii deck, then all of a sudden we can hopefully clog up their board a little bit further than they intend to. I have to have restraint. I see Sinister London and I just want to go, I just want to rock. And then there's something going on with our screen elements. So do we do Debris? Do we instead do a double green goblin? Let's do the green goblin first. Then next turn we can do demon and Debris to finish capping out all of the locations, ideally. So they do a double bishop, so that's kind of unfortunate for them. They're not going to be able to drop a whole lot of cards, and they do drop the Widow's Bite onto the board so that they can start drawing cards again, which does make sense, but they don't know what is about to hit them, and it is about to hit them pretty hard. So they have 4 spaces that they have left that they can play in. We're going to do demon first. That way it takes priority. We can guarantee that we have that there. Let's see if we can sneak a snap in on them. And then after this game, I'll look at what's going on with our screen elements. For whatever reason, the right-hand side, these little buttons are all kind of off-center. And so it looks like maybe they're not going to retreat here. And so they drop a Sunspot into the Savage Land, which is, I mean, it's just okay. And then as long as our Debris goes into the far left lane, into the Savage Land, it does. That caps out the board. We are done. We're done. By turn 5, we're done, and we do have, thanks to the demon, we have the lead in Hellfire Club and Sinister London. They can skip and win Savage Land, but of course they do come out with the retreat because they don't have any moves to play. They don't have any way to come up over us and power into those 2 locked down lanes. So satisfying. I love Sinister London with a Debris deck. It feels so bad to be on the receiving end of that, but the Sinister London lane is so phenomenal. All right, and so I think it did end up fixing the issue. I'm not sure what happened or why the aspect ratios changed, but I do think I ended up fixing it. And so next up we have Adherent Gnome. In our starting hand, we have our Debris, so we'll be able to flood a few rocks onto the board. Unfortunately, we don't have Korg or Rock Slide. Ooh, but Limbo is a nice addition. And so that gives us an additional chance to impact them with the rocks into their deck list. So I don't think we drop Carnage just yet. Next turn, I think we drop Debris, but I think we're going to drop Debris probably into Limbo lane. No, we're going to drop Debris into the Washington, D.C. lane. Yes, we would get upside from the rock being an ability-less token, but so would they. And so I think we're going to drop our Debris here to try to fill up their Baxter Building and their Limbo a little bit faster. And so they do drop a Sunspot as well. Oh my gosh. And so Baxter Building is capped out. They're going to have to skip to be able to make anything happen from here on out in that lane. But with the Electro Ramp, that does scare me a little bit. It means that they probably have some really high power cards. That makes me really hesitant on dropping Doc Ock onto the board. And so unless we drop Doc Ock here, then it's a free 10 power. Actually, yeah, I like that. I like dropping it here. That means we should probably drop our Rock Slide into Washington, D.C., I think. Yeah, let's go with Rock Slide into Washington, D.C. If we force them to draw into some rocks, great. That could disrupt their flow. So they skip. That means they probably have an Infinite here, which I'm pretty afraid of. And so in that case, we can do a Hood, a Black Widow, and a Carnage. That's going to give us an 8 power push in Limbo. I assume they drop their Infinite here. We can then drop a Doc Ock here, but we're going to need additional power there too. Oh, we're in a tough spot, guys. But let's go ahead and drop the Doc Ock. Oh, so they don't drop the Infinite into the Washington, D.C. lane. Interesting. It's kind of unfortunate, because then our power push here doesn't really make a lot of sense. We do stop them from drawing into anything this next turn, and then we do have a 7th turn as well. And so I think we're going to go ahead and drop the Doc Ock into the Baxter Building to go ahead and do a Demon token into Washington, D.C., because it's going to be really hard for us to win the Limbo location no matter what. And so let's go ahead and drop that. They drop a Magneto, which doesn't have any targets to pull from, thankfully, but they do have the advantage in Washington, D.C., at least for now. Our Demon token gets a +3 power bonus from Washington, D.C., which is great. We can do something like a Wolfsbane, and then we can do Angela and Viper here. It's not going to be able to send anything their way. This is going to be a 7 power push into the Washington, D.C. lane. I don't know that that is enough. 7 power push, plus it's going to be a 6 power swing by taking Baxter Building away from Adherent Gnome and giving it to us, as long as we can win that one. So if they skip here, that's 7 more power. That puts them at 19. This is only going to be, oh, so do they skip here? So if they skip here, we probably need something like, oh no, but we can't do the Viper there. Oh, that feels awful. Because this would be, oh no, because this would end up being 10 to push us to 20. But if they drop something, then it's definitely going to be more advantageous the other way around. I think, I'm so back and forth. Let's do it this way. Let's do this way and let it play out. Okay, so they did drop a card. Good. They didn't pass. So they have the Wolfsbane. They're not going to get the upside of the cards that we dropped into Baxter Building. So we do get the upside of turning that location away from them. So we get the 6-powered swing in our favor in the Washington, D.C. lane. Oh my gosh. Did you guys see smoke? I feel like that was my brain trying to operate on 1000%, and it was having so many technical difficulties. Had they skipped, this play line would not have worked. But as long as they dropped a high cost card, then it would have. Oh my gosh. Adherent Gnome, very good game. That was a tough one. So the Electro Ramp is going to be a tough matchup for our Debrii, because we're just not able to fill up the board fast enough. And we want to go up against a deck that has dropped a few kind of mediocre resources before they realize that we are clogging their board with that much junk that quickly. All right, so next up we have Junlia, and it doesn't look like it wants us to play our deck at all. So we have Korg that we drew from District X. In our hand, we had the Viper, Carnage, and Wolfsbane, none of which are great for us, unfortunately. So this is going to be just a random match. We're going to see what we can do, but we don't get to play our deck. So if you guys are just interested in the Debrii deck, then you may have to jump ahead to the next match, but I do want to try to make this one work. So I think we're just going to drop our Viper and our Craven into the lanes. We're not going to shove anything on their way with Viper. Craven most likely won't get any kind of benefit from the move component this entire game. And so then the last location is New York. All right, and so let's go ahead and go with a morph here. Maybe we can hit a high roll. I mean, maybe we don't, but we are going to go ahead and give it a shot. So they use Deathlock and it kills the Wolverine, which is kind of fortunate. It looks like they've gotten some decent like destruction pack. All right, so next up we have Starscream. Starscream is a Decepticon from Transformers, and so then I went down a rabbit hole learning all about Starscream. I know if you watched my last video, I had the debate whether it was a dirty name, depending on if it was Star or Stars, but it is Starscream. And so we're gonna go ahead and start out with our hood here. We do have Rock Slide and Doc Ock, so maybe we can hit them with the old 1-2 combo. Ooh, and then we draw into Viper here. I almost want to snap, because we're gonna pull their cards in. Hopefully they're running something like a Mr. Negative, and we can pull their cards into the Isle of Silence. Hopefully we hit something like a Devil Dino, an Iron Man, something that's like huge that is going to be negated from that middle location. But I think we wait until we know for sure what they're running before we snap. But I did want to be greedy and go ahead and snap, because we sent them the hood into Sewer System, which is great for us. Oh, and then we get Green Goblin, and we're going to go ahead and do it. We got Green Goblin. We're going to send them that in Sewer System as well to further that lead. Sewer System is going to impact it with another -1. So it's going to be a -4 Green Goblin going their way. On turn 4, we'll probably drop a Rock Slide, I think, into the Monster Island lane. And then on turn 5, of course, Doc Ock. It just depends on what they drop. If they're waiting until turn 4 and they drop a Mr. Negative, at that point, I think it's going to be a little bit too late for them. But they do drop a card here, okay? And so it is a Killmonger. They kill the hood, so that's they get a little bit of upside from that, but we could stop them from drawing into cards next turn. But I think we go with the Rock Slide instead. Maybe next time, instead of doing the Doc Ock, maybe we do something like a Black Widow Demon in Wolfsbane to stop them from drawing on that final turn. But let's go with the Rock Slide. Hopefully they draw into one of the rocks we send their way. They do a Cosmo, which is just a second too late for them, unfortunately. Well, fortunately for us, unfortunately for them. We could do the Doc Ock, we could do a Debrii to start filling up their locations. It would have to be either here or here. So I think they're running some kind of either control or destroyer style list. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and not Doc Ock just yet. We're going to do the Debrii, hopefully finish capping out the Monster Island for them. We're also going to drop Black Widow, so they're not going to be able to draw into this final turn. They probably won't drop it on the board, but they won't be able to draw going into this last turn. So if they don't have the greatest of resources just yet, then they're kind of locked in. Oh my gosh. That was the worst. That was terrible. Oh my gosh. So they used Jubilee, which pulled into Iron Man, which was -1 impacted by Sewer System, which then elevates their negativeness in the Sewer System. Oh my god, that's unfortunate. That's really unfortunate for them. So what we can do a Doc Ock into the Isle of Silence, but I don't think we even necessarily worry about the randomness. We can do Doc Ock here. We get 25 power. It's not going to pull into a card, so if they don't play a card there, we don't have to worry about it. And then we have a 6 power demon token that we can push here as well. I don't think there's any way that they can come back in the sewer system, so we just have to swing one of these 2 lanes. I think this should do it pretty easily. So I'm gonna, oh, okay. And so they did retreat later. But oh my gosh, the combination of the Debrii mixed with the Jubilee play ended up capping this lane out a lot faster than what they intended to, and the Iron Man was probably the worst thing that they could have gotten, seeing as how they didn't have any positive power cards in that lane. All right, so next up we have fellow content creator Wes D4 Best. We don't have a great starting hand here, but it's not terrible. We do have Black Widow to disrupt them a little bit. We have Green Goblin that we can send their way, and now we also have a Debrii. So I think we do drop the Black Widow here. Actually, Debrii is really bad when mixed with the miniaturized lab, because Debrii won't be able to send cards into that lane. I think we're going to do our Angela. On turn 3, we'll do a Green Goblin, and then maybe on turn 4, we do Black Widow and Scorpion. I don't know. That's a loose play line. Ooh, so it's Morbius. They're running a discard style deck list. So if it's a Dracula list and we send them any kind of rocks whatsoever, they're going to be forced to play them to make sure that they can guarantee what Dracula pulls into at the end of the game. And so let's go ahead and buff up our Angela with the Green Goblin play, send them a negative Green Goblin into their Asgard lane, and then I think we just do, ooh, actually we can do the Rock Slide now, which I think the Rock Slide is going to be the best impact for us. Yes, we could impact maybe 5 of their cards with our Scorpion, we could stop them from drawing, but Rock Slide is going to offer a decent power push and disrupt their draw potential as well, not just for 1 turn, but potentially for the rest of the game. So they do a Wong. Okay. So turn 5 here, do we pull all of their cards into the Nidavellir lane? That kind of feeds into what they want, right? Or maybe we end up getting their Swarm, their Apocalypse before any discards trigger. It's definitely a gamble. It's a gamble, but is it worth it? We could also do a Debrii here, which would send a rock into their lane, but that's only 1 space, so they'd still be able to discard a couple of times. Let's go with the Doc Ock. Let's go with the randomness. We are gonna just YOLO it. We're gonna send it. We're gonna see what we can pull into. Oh, so a Death is huge. That's not what I was expecting. And then Invisible Woman. Oh no, and then an Infinite. Oh my gosh. So they're running a Hella deck. They're running a Hella deck with Wong, which threw me entirely by surprise. That is not what I thought we were going up against here. Oh my gosh, that's not great. So I think we do Debrii. Actually, let's do Hood and then Viper and then Debrii. Maybe we can sneak one of these lanes into being capped out before they have any chances to resummon anything. Luckily, we have 2 of their really big, large minion cards in Nidavellir, so we don't have to worry about them being able to be resummoned. So they have Magneto, which pulls, okay, the Rock Slide. Oh no, we could accidentally send them Rock Slide. Oh my gosh. Okay, that was almost so bad. It came down to a 50-50 coin flip. Because of the Magneto play. All right, so where do we play? We only need 2 power here, so we can do something like this. We can do a Demon and a Wolfsbane, which will offer the highest power we can here. Just for giggles, we'll go ahead and play a Scorpion here to cut the amount that they win this lane by. But we're gonna win this one. Oh wait, the Morbius. We need more than 2 power here. But how much do we need here? I think we do the Wolfsbane and then we do Demon Scorpion to negatively impact their cards, because Angela will get buffed up for both of these cards that are played. I think to guarantee that maybe they drop like a Hell Cow, which would buff Morbius up by 4. We need to anticipate that and be able to play more than 5 power because of that. And so we are going to go with the Wolfsbane here. I think we have a decent shot, depending on what they drop into that left lane. It's a Hela, which is 6 power. They don't have anywhere to resummon any of their cards. So with the Demon, with the Scorpion, we are going to be able to come up over their power level. What an odd game. That is not how I anticipated any of that. I thought when I saw the Wong that it was going to be like an Apocalypse and a Swarm discard deck. But the Hela deck threw me off guard entirely. Luckily, we had enough power and enough like board presence and disruption that we were able to make the rest of it work. Oh my gosh. Wes D4 Best, very good game, very chaotic, very chaotic. I don't know a better way to describe it other than just utter chaos. And so what better way to end the video than on a non-standard, non-typical kind of play style with this list. So with the list, we did end up going 6 wins, and 2 losses, which is not terrible, especially for a Debrii style deck list. It feels okay. I was worried when we took out the Hazmat and the Spider-Woman component, but I don't feel like this deck list really missed any beats, and it may even be a slightly better version than the Spider-Woman Hazmat, because we're able to stop them from drawing to their big power plays. We can get a little bit more consistent of a Doc Ock pool because of the rocks and things like that. But overall, the deck list feels pretty fun. I love a good Debrii deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.